All right. Hello, everyone. So this is a Shift Your Life podcast. Welcome back. This is episode 104, and today we're going to talk about not someone
Jen's
else. Just kidding.
going crazy.
You're on Zoom and saw that. I have a small little hiccup with Zoom right now, but all is good. So episode 104 will be around comparison is the killer. Okay. So Courtney and I spent about the next 20 minutes or so chatting a little bit about that. But if you have not come across our podcast before, Shift Your Life, we're a wellness and life coach for women. We help women to get unstuck from the defeat of the diet industry, find the physical results and confidence they desire, and keep it for a lifetime. I am Coach Jen. I had my personal story with weight loss and lack of self-confidence growing up. And this is my partner in crime, Coach Courtney.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. My name is Courtney Miracle. So I have been in the wellness world for, oh my gosh, coming up on 20 odd years. And yes, I'm only 25. So it started when I was 5. But no, my story, you guys, was from the outside looking in, you would have thought I had the confidence, that I had the body, and I had all the things. But behind the scenes, I had pretty severe eating disorders, and then disordered image, and really disordered body image. And I just was never happy. But when I made some shifts from the inside, it all changed. So that is our passion, is to show you guys some of those tips and tricks and lead you down that road so you can really be happy and healthy.
Awesome. And if you'd like to join our podcast live, you can do that right in our Facebook group. It's called Shift, the number 2, A Better You, and women's community. So we are exclusive to mostly women coaching. So we're excited to have you there on live. But thank you again for also joining us on YouTube or anywhere else you might catch this podcast. So today, Courtney, let's talk a little bit about comparison. It comes up quite a bit. And yeah, one of the things I've often heard is don't compare chapter 1 to chapter 30 for someone else. But the reality is that I want it now, and I want it to be perfect, and I want to arrive. And so for some of you, that might resonate with the fact that we want the things right now. But the reality is that many times in life, in society, in any ads that you see, we're usually sold the highlight reel, right? And the highlight reel is technically, hey, I've arrived in it. This was an overnight success. But the reality is, for most of us, that is not the story. The story is that we all start on a chapter 1. So I'm a big fan of just getting unstuck, which is make sure you give yourself some grace and remember that your chapter 1 is going to look different than somebody else's chapter 30.
Yeah. Well, and I think the important thing to realize is that, it's not about getting there, right? You're never going to, the truth of the matter is you're never going to be there, because wherever there is, once you get there, you're going to try to get somewhere else, right? So in my background, it says it's not what you get, but it's who you become. And so often we see somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, they just have it all figured out. They have this, they have that. And you have no idea what their backstories are, right? I mean, I think Jen and I get this a lot, and people are like, well, you guys just have it figured out. It's just easy for you. And the truth of the matter is, it was never easy for us until recently, right? It was years of struggle, years of strife, years of all of that. And even when, if we're talking physical results, when you look at somebody, just because they have, quote unquote, the body you think you want, that doesn't mean that they have the joy and the happiness and the confidence or any of that underlying part. And so I think the biggest thing to realize is why. We talk about this all the time, right? Why do you want to be there, right? And what does that look like? Because when you can create a vision of okay, if this is day 1 and chapter 1, what do I want? Day 12, day 15, day 462. What do I want that to feel like? Because if we can see that vision, we talk about this a lot, then you don't need to compare. But I think it's really hard to not look around and be like, well, they got it all figured out. They have the body they want. They have the life they want. They have the career they want. And really underneath, you have no idea what's going on for them.
Right. And, Courtney, I think, one of the things folks probably know about us at this point is we like to share our stories, because we believe there's a lot of power in vulnerability. So, you mentioned about it being easy. I'm going to say it this way as well. I'm still, I'm a mom of 2 boys, 6 and 10. I own my own business, and Courtney's my business partner. And there's a lot of things that come in, towards us every day. I'm not going to say every day is easy, but the ability to bounce back and get there quicker again does become easier, right? So I've been on the whole hamster wheel as well of, you show up to the gym for the first 2 weeks of the year, and then you kind of forget about it for the next 8. because life gets busy. So for us, it's not necessarily that it gets easier, and this can be for anybody's story. It's the fact that we're able to bounce back into the routine, I think, a little bit quicker. Courtney, one of the things you kind of mentioned about your story is, and I'm gonna use these words, you're an elite soccer player.
I was.
Yeah, you had it all. Right?
Yeah.
You had the friendships, you had resources, you had, but there was something else going behind the scene. And
Yeah.
I think that's one thing for all of us to keep in mind is we don't know somebody else's story.
Yeah.
We're probably filling in the blanks as to what we think their story is, but it's not necessarily your story. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that, Courtney? Maybe what was going on for you and kind of how that, maybe
Yeah, for sure.
progress for the next 25 years?
Yeah, right. So for me, you guys, my food issues really came from body image issues, which is interesting. I actually had this conversation with my 9-year-old. I like to talk about her a lot. So she's 9. Obviously she's tiny, right? She's 4 foot tall, weighs maybe 50 pounds. And we had a conversation last night about food and body. And for me, that was my story, right? So she said she sometimes gets harassed or made fun of for being so little. And I was like, well, do you have a problem being little? And she said, no, I actually like being little. I'm like, okay, well, then what they think doesn't matter, right? I get somebody else's opinion, but it hurts, right? Because they say things to her. And so what I realized was my story was I was always the littlest one. Like I'm 5 foot tall. I didn't weigh 100 pounds till I was probably 18. And so as my body started to shift and I got hips, I tried on a mini skirt and my brother was like, yeah, you look like you have hippo hips. Like I remember we had this long haul and I was at the end of it. And I walked out to my family, and this was the 90s or the 80s, probably at this point. And I said, do my hips look big? And my family was like, you're crazy, because I was crazy. No, you don't have hippo hips, right? But that set into me that no, your hips don't look big, that I had hippo hips. So from there, I created this story, and subconsciously it was that I had to be the littlest one, right? And so it went to the point of guys, I was eating a tablespoon of peanut butter a day. And surviving, playing soccer. I was, varsity my entire life, went on to play college. I don't even know how that happened, but I had the friendships, I had the boyfriend, I had what everyone thought was this amazing thing. But behind the scenes, I was eating a tablespoon of peanut butter, or I was eating and then making myself throw up. So if you ever think that it's this amazing thing, it's not, right? And so, I think it's just really realizing of where you are is it might be better than you anticipate when you're comparing it to somebody else, right? I think it's even worse with social media now, is that we see the highlight reel, we see all the edited versions. When we were kids, it was only edited in magazines. Now everything's edited, right? You have no idea. I'm not kidding you guys. I've seen people online and met them in real life, and I'm like, I'm like, man, I need to get better at filters, because I have no idea who that person is. You can't even tell it's them. And so I think it's trying to stay in our own lane and realize that what are we really searching for, right? For me, I thought that when I had that perfect body, it was a perfectionism thing, right? For whatever that was, I thought I'd feel a certain way, right? Well, if I get the 6-pack abs, if I get these things, then I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel confident. I'm going to feel all of those things. And I got those, I had those, and I didn't feel any of the things. I actually felt worse. So for me, it was starting to pull back the layers. And that's what we help our clients with, is what are you really what's the internal feeling you're searching for? Because that external is really never going to get you there. Now, do we believe in feeling great in your body and having all of that? Absolutely. But it's that internal feeling. So for me, it was actual confidence and joy, and just this is who I am, right? Stop comparing to other people and just be who you are. And Jen, I know your story was really kind of completely different, but very similar. So what do you feel like you thought you were searching for when you were comparing who you were to other people?
Oh, I just wanted to be accepted. Whatever the thing was, I wanted acceptance, right? And again, searching for that, you don't ever really get it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be a sign somewhere that it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Until you finally realize that you are enough, you are worthy, you are set in your worth. And so you can kind of discount all the other things. The other things kind of become more voices in background. But no, I was clearly looking for acceptance from others. And whether it was, overweight, not overweight enough, too shy, too extroverted, to whatever, right? It was always a bother to someone else. So, for me, comparison to the popular kids in school, it was hard. It was very hard. And so, again, we talk about often comparison being the killer of joy, because it's never enough. You're never going to find your worth if you're constantly comparing yourself and your story to someone else's. You know, one of the things we were actually just kind of bantering about a little bit before we got on here was, you probably have heard of this show. If anybody else binge watches, let us know. It's called Married at First Sight. And so, and the reality is, you know, you've got these 10 amazing people showing up in this amazing island and having this amazing honeymoon, but you also see the conflict and you see the disconnect and all this stuff. And the reality is that we are sold a certain story, but really, what is the story behind it, right? And my wife will often kind of joke around with this. Reality TV isn't real, y'all. There's multiple takes and things. Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but it's not. And so I guess what I'm saying is, what is the story that someone else is trying to sell you? What are you comparing to? Because really, when you peel back that onion, that's probably not the story that's really there. So just to kind of level set on the comparison is the killer of all joy. Just keep that in mind, y'all.
I think the other thing with comparison is like it like what lens are you looking at it, right? So you know, we are pretty avid exercisers, athletes, whatever it is. And I think if you can look at someone and use like, wow, look what they can do. They can deadlift 300 pounds as inspiration for something that you can also do. Like that's a great comparison. And that's something that really shifted for me. Like way back in the day when we started, we were a CrossFit gym and I would see these women and I'm like, holy cow, like my max at that point was like 95 pounds. And I was comparing and I was like, wow, I'm really weak. And if she can do it, I can do it. Right. So I think it's that if you're comparing as motivation, but if you're comparing and you're like, man, I'm a terrible athlete because she's lifting 3 times as much as I am. So I think it's looking at like, can we use that as motivation? Can we lift each other up? Can we look at somebody else's journey and be like, wow, she might be on chapter 30 and I'm only on chapter 1, but if she could do it, I could also do it versus, well, she's on chapter 30 and I'm only on chapter 1 and there's no way I'm ever going to get there. Right. And so I think it's really being cognizant of that lens of like, how can we use other people's success? Maybe they did start when they were 10, right? Maybe they like, I have a niece who's 21 and she's been lifting since she was 10. So it's not really fair for somebody that is just getting into, you know, into weightlifting at 19 to compare to her because she's been doing it for 10 years. So I think it's like, can we use that comparison to motivate? And can we, when we're on chapter 30, can we see somebody that's on day 1 and be like, and Jen is amazing at this. And I think that's one of the things that the world loves about her is that she's like, hey, it's your day 1. You're good. Just stay with me. Give me that 1%, right? Because that 1% gets you to chapter 30. And that's the only way to get there is one day at a time, one step at a time, often one failure at a time, right? And so I think that's the cool thing. It's like, observe what else is possible because you see other women do it, but don't think that just because you're not there yet, you're never going to get there because they weren't there at that point either. Like nobody woke up doing all the things they're doing right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it all goes down to consistent actions. I think the things that we're mostly, you know, we're most proud of are the things that we showed up and we did. And regardless of the failure, regardless of the distractions in life and all those things, we stuck with it. And probably we're like, man, that is my superhuman power. My superhuman power is I'm an empathetic listener. I'm a great mom. I'm a great athlete because I showed up consistently and I did it day in and day out, even when the storm was here. Right. So I love how you spin that around, Courtney, because we can take motivation from comparison as well, right? And, you know, one thing, you know, we'll kind of talk a little bit about before we wrap up this session today, but it's also comparison to self. So I'm just going to, I know I'm going to shock some folks out there, but my life today does not look like my life did 15, 20, 10 years ago. Okay. It's completely different. I have different demands. You know, my job looks different. The people in my life are different. You know, and so one of the things to also keep in mind is that we often say, and sometimes it happens even after injury, I could lift 100 pounds or I can do this thing or I can run at this rate, but I can't now. And we use it as a demotivator instead of saying, I was there once and I can get there again, but also giving ourselves the grace of understanding that probably our life looks different. And so we can't compare our own, you know, when we were 15, 20, 25 years old to maybe when we're further on in life and life looks different. So you were sharing a little bit of your own personal story on that earlier today, Courtney.
Yeah. So a lot of you guys know we started as a CrossFit gym and, you know, I started CrossFit when I was 32 or 3. So I was not young. I wish this part was around when I was younger, but every year there's something called the Open, and we're not technically a CrossFit gym anymore, and we don't really do competitive CrossFit, but there was a workout that we did in 2014, and it was a laundry list of like, it's rowing and then toes to bar and then wall balls and then power cleans and then ends with muscle ups. And so I did this workout in 2014. Parson was not. So my oldest was barely a year old, and I was one of those people that like had to have the comeback and whatever. So I can do muscle ups, which is a thing that not all women can do. So it was a really big deal for me to get there. But getting there was crazy for me because it was 30 for me heavy power cleans. And I legit blacked out. I don't even remember the muscle up, but I got one muscle up. I had to do the workout twice. Well, that workout came back. And so I did it on Friday by myself. And I didn't get through the cleans. And there was a piece of me, it's like, wow, I'm really unfit. I'm this, I'm that. And then I was like, no, I'm at a different stage in life. And I quite honestly just didn't want to go that hard. I didn't really matter that much. But it's a reminder that like, just because we were at a different place, right? I'm at a different place, like Jen said. Now it's more about me, a mom. I have maybe 45 minutes to get my workout in every day. I work out by myself. I'm not trying to be a competitive athlete. So like, I should look at this and be like, wow, I just turned 46 and I'm still pretty darn fit compared to the rest of the world. And if I desired for that to be my thing, that would be. But right now my goals are different, right? It's building my life. It's taking care of my kids. It's building this business. It's all of those things. And so it's also not looking back and being like, wow, I'm falling apart. I'm 46 now. I've fallen apart. No, it's not that. So it's giving yourself grace. Okay. But the other thing I want to say about this that we see with so many of our clients is that they do make progress and they forget to compare to where they started because they're like, but I'm not there yet. And I'm like, did you know that when you started this, like you couldn't do a body weight air squat. And now you just, sorry, my dog is having dreams in the back, in the background. But like, it's like, sometimes you got to remember, go back and compare, like, where were you when you started, right? Where were you in this journey? And like, just because you're acknowledging you made progress doesn't mean you're going to stop making progress. So I think it's really just being aware of like, what are those thoughts and feelings, and are they serving us or are they not serving us? And if they're not, how can we compare to something that's going to give us grace and give us joy, and allow us to know that we're always on a journey.
Right. Yeah. And again, using comparison for both sides of it. We so often use comparison for negative, but it can actually be a huge motivator for ourselves and for others. So it's a great point, Courtney. Thank you for sharing that. So to wrap this podcast up, this episode up, we have some pretty exciting news. Okay.
Yeah.
So, as some of you may know, so we usually host some free workshops, and we do this a few times a year. And this is really a way to really serve our communities. We believe in serving to the highest degree and leading with service. So, drum roll, Pete, please. So this is just, we are first sharing it with y'all. So our workshop will actually be for Women's Month, and it will be called Together We Shift, because we believe in the power of community, and it will be March 14th through the 16th. So can't wait to have you all. I will go ahead and drop the link as well in the comments section of this podcast, and on Facebook as well. Again, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're also on TikTok these days. So you will see all this blasted on there, but just want to let y'all know first that we do have this workshop just coming up in a few weeks. So can't wait to have y'all register and join us.
Yeah. And we will do this, you guys, on Zoom, because it's so much more fun to see you in real life, be able to connect. It's kind of like a podcast on steroids. So we really just lean in and serve, and we want to be able to see you guys. So do yourself a favor, mark off your calendar now. It's 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time till 12 or 12:30-ish, depending on how passionate we get. But mark it on your calendars now, put it there, plan to be there live, plan to join us on Zoom so we can see you and meet you and truly answer your questions and really help you make the rest of this year as amazing as the start has been.
All right. Can't wait to see y'all on the other side. If there's anything else we can do for you, our website is www.shift2abetteryou.com. And again, our free Facebook community is Shift2 a Better You. And we will see you on the other side. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your day. And remember, you can do this.
Bye for now.